The prayer this afternoon will be offered by the good delegate from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If we could all bow our heads for a moment. Just ask, Lord, we ask you to give us peace, give us the knowledge that we need, Lord. Help us just to continue the people's work down here, that we all can recognize we all have different opinions. And that's not a bad thing, because you knew you made each one of us and you're differently. And Lord, we just ask you to give us the wisdom and the knowledge to do the people's business. Amen.
Amen. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker? She's in. I'll go to room. We got her. She's in.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call.
We'll just go.
There being 109 members present, the House is now in session. The clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, March the 11th, 2022.
Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the journal.
So ordered. Petitions, memorials, and other papers. Report of the Committee on Economic Matters, report number 20. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 440, electricity, community solar energy generating systems, generating capacity. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker,
Recognizing the floor leader.
move so much be considered reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 subjects community solar generating systems of 2 megawatts or greater to the CPCN process and makes a conforming change in the net metering statute. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 854, alcoholic beverages, Maryland alcohol manufacturing and promotion. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
As amended, House Bill 550. Oh, I'm sorry. This is 854. Woo. Yes. As amended, House Bill 854. Oh, I have it. Establishes the Advisory Commission on Maryland Alcohol Manufacturing and the Maryland Alcohol Manufacturing Promotion Fund in the Department of Commerce. The Comptroller generally must distribute alcohol tax revenues from alcohol produced by breweries, distilleries, and wineries in the state to the new fund. Amendment number 1 adds a representative of the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission to the Advisory Commission, clarifies the not-for-profit entities that may receive grants, prohibits grants from lobbying activities, and finally requires the annual report to be given to the standing committees with subject matter jurisdiction. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Health and Government Operations, report number 10. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 28, pharmacists, aids for the cessation of tobacco product use. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 defines the term nicotine replacement therapy medication and incorporates the term throughout the bill. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 109, Maryland Department of Health, System for Newborn Screening Requirements. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 requires the Secretary of the Department of Health and the Advisory Council to determine whether to approve the inclusion of a condition in the system for newborn screening within 1 year after the addition of the condition to the newborn screening panel. It also establishes the requirements to be followed if the Secretary or the Advisory Council do not approve the inclusion of the condition, provides that if the Secretary and Advisory Council approve the inclusion of the condition within 1 year of the approval, the Maryland Department of Health shall implement the testing, and if the implementation of testing requires the procurement of specialized testing equipment, they have to sign a final procurement contract with a vendor for all the equipment necessary to implement the testing. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Recognizing the gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the floor leader rise for a quick question?
Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just quick scanning it. This has no impact on the parental ability to refuse any testing offered, correct?
No, it does not.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 325, State and Local Procurement Payment Practices. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Move so much be considered the reading amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical, adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 strikes language from the bill that would have applied to local government payment practices, shortens the time frame for interest to begin accruing, and strikes language that would have made changes to other payment processing time frames, delays effective date, tasks DLS with studying payment processing time frames, and fiscal impact of further shortening these time frames. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 581, Public Safety, Fire Rescue, or Emergency Medical Services Entities, Peer Support Programs. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Move so much be considered the reading amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical, and number 2 requires BHA to consult with the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services Systems in developing a report on best practices and professional standards for peer support counseling programs. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 767, Emergency Procurement Contracts, Term Length and Renewal. Favor of amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Move so much be considered the reading amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical, adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 extends from 6 months to 12 months the time limit on the contract term for emergency contracts. Allows the unit to renew an emergency contract only with approval from the Board of Public Works, and allows the unit to use expedited procurement in addition to other procurement methods other than emergency procurement to extend an unmet need from the emergency procurement. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 968, Health Occupations, Dental Assistance, Certification and Regulation. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 changes terminology from certified dental assistant to expanded function dental assistant. Authorizes a dental assistant to assist in performing intraoral photography under general supervision. Clarifies the monitoring of nitrous oxide that an expanded function dental assistant is authorized to perform when certified. Raises the minimum age of applicant from 17 to 18 years old and specifies the course of study that the board may approve for applicants for a certificate. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 969, State Board of Dental Examiners, Membership, Training, and Disciplinary Processes. Revisions. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes from the bill language that would have altered the nomination process for members of the State Board of Dental Examiners. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 973, Pharmacy Services, Administrative Organizations, and Pharmacy Benefits Managers, Contracts. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 requires a PSAO to provide to an independent pharmacist an electronic or paper copy of specified contracts, amendments, payment schedules, and reimbursement rates. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1073, Health, Accessibility of Electronic Advanced Care Planning Documents. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 repeals requirements that electronic advanced directives meet specified authentication guidelines. Amendment number 3 defines electronic platform and adds clarifying language that the platform will enable individuals to upload or save advanced planning documents. Amendment number 4 exempts community providers, home health agencies, assisted living facilities, and hospice facilities from specified provisions, specifies that certain entities are required to provide a link on their websites to a web page on the state-designated health information exchange, and provides that specified provisions in the bill do not require a managed care organization to assist in drafting, storing, or accessing electronic advanced planning documents. Amendment number 5 alters definitions. Amendment number 6 specifies the Commission may explore linking the websites of carriers, managed care organizations, and healthcare providers to an electronic platform, specifies the entities the Commission is required to consult in developing the electronic platform, authorizes the Commission to contract with a third-party vendor, and specifies the electronic platform must provide non-visual access. Amendment number 7 clarifies the circumstances under which a carrier is required to provide specified materials, provides that specified provisions in the bill do not require carriers to assist in drafting, storing, or accessing electronic advanced care planning documents, and alters the enactment date. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. What's going on? The amendments is adopted, or adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report has been adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, The bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1127, Public Health State Designated Exchange Health Data Utility. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment 1 defines non-controlled prescription drugs. Amendment number 2 clarifies the entities who will be assisted by the health data utility, provides that the bill applies to dispensers, provides that the regulations required by the bill will take into account consumer perspective, requires the state designated exchange to establish a consumer advisory council to bring the perspectives of individuals with an interest in protecting consumers into the delivery of services provided by the state designated exchange. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1219, Pharmacists Status as Healthcare Providers and Reimbursement. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes out all of the provisions of the bill except those related to destruction of records and requires the Maryland Insurance Commissioner to establish a work group to study options and requirements necessary for reimbursement of pharmacists who provide medical services within the scope of practice and in their work settings, and report back to Finance and HGO by December 31st, 2022. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1222, Public Health Baltimore City Behavioral Health Crisis Incident Review Team. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 removes a specific reference to Behavioral Health System Baltimore, replaces it with a general term Local Health Authority for Baltimore City. Move the amendment.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1397, Health Insurance Prescription Insulin Drugs Limits on Copayment and Co-Insurance Insulin Cost Reduction Act. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendments add sponsors and make technical changes. Move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Ways and Means, report number 13. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 15, Invasive and Native Plants Classification, Listing, Use, and Sales and Use Tax. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendments strike the sales and use tax provisions from the bill. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 23, school discipline, data collection, and school resource officers. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Oh, there. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 removes provisions related to school resource officers from the bill. State expenditures increase by around $78,000 next fiscal year for someone at MSDE to administer the data required by the bill. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 27, historic revitalization tax credit funding and extension. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendments alter the maximum amount of the income tax credit that may be claimed for a commercial rehab project under the Historic Revitalization Tax Credit Program, alter the appropriation required under the bill, and extend eligibility to claim certain property tax credits under the Enterprise Zone Program for certain newly constructed properties. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 158, Maryland New Start Act of 2022. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker,
Recognizing the floor, ladies.
move so much be considered the reading of the amendments. Move so much be considered. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 reduces the allowable administrative costs, modifies the eligibility requirements for the program, reduces the funding level, and adds reporting requirements. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you. Will the floor leader rise, please?
Floor leader.
Good evening. Can you tell us what this bill does as amended? I pulled it up and a bunch of language has been stricken. What does it do now?
Yeah, the bill basically has 2 parts. Part of it is creating funding a matching grant program for organizations that are going to do training for returning citizens, i.e. People who are formerly incarcerated, to help them start up businesses.
I'm sorry, it's hard to hear you.
Is it hard to hear?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
please
I'll
hold it closer to your
Okay.
mouth. Thank you.
Yeah, is this better?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Great. Yeah, so the bill has 2 parts. One part is creating a matching grant program for organizations. They're going to do training for returning citizens, people who have criminal convictions.
So returning citizens are what?
People who were formerly incarcerated to
Okay.
help them develop the skills they need to start businesses. The second part of the bill creates a microloan program within the Department of Commerce to provide loans to participants in those training programs.
So this is a bill to give money to prison people who've been incarcerated to start a new business?
That's right.
And how long do they need to be out of prison?
The bill just requires that they have completed their term or that they are eligible for, I'm actually not sure what the term is, but like for work release. There are some cases where people are completing their
So
incarceration.
they could still be on work release?
I believe so, yes.
All right, can I hold this bill for a possible amendment?
Till the next session.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Question for the House is a special order HB 158 to the appropriate time next session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 252, Income Tax Return Preparation Assistance Program for Low-Income Families. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 changes the mechanism for how the resident can claim the tax credit. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 268, property tax exemptions for business personal property alterations. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the vice chair of the committee, recognizing the subcommittee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendments add sponsors and make technical changes. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 472, primary and secondary education, Title IX, policies and procedure. Here are voices. Act of 2022. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing vice chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes provisions from the bill establishing a statewide Title IX system and a data collection system. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 497, vehicle excise tax exemption, active duty military. Favorable.
The question before the House. Question before the House. My papers mixed up. Okay. Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 641, income tax, theatrical production tax credit. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds a co-sponsor. Amendment number 2 reduces from $10 million to $5 million the maximum amount of credits that may be awarded each fiscal year for qualified theatrical production costs and sunsets the credit after 5 years. Move the committee amendments.
The question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 685, education, regional resource centers, and libraries funding. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Madam Speaker, thank you. So much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 lowers the rate at which the funding for regional resource center libraries and public libraries is raised and requires public libraries to provide at least one education, health, or business program new beginning in 2024. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 752, public schools, school psychologist recruitment program. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the vice chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1, the committee amendment requires that the school psychologist recruitment program seek to support individuals historically underrepresented among school professional personnel. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 795, gross receipts tax on short-term lease or rental of heavy equipment alterations. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1039, property tax, community solar energy generating systems, agrivoltaics. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1163, primary and secondary education, virtual education requirements. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes a Flip the Classroom pilot program from the bill. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 48. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1200, environment permit applications.
Recognizing the maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know myself and a couple other members have amendments on this bill, but the amendments are just not ready at the desks right now. Could we move this to the back of the calendar?
Yeah, wait a minute.
Mr. Floor Leader?
Hang on.
That would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you,
That's
Madam
fine.
Speaker.
Okay.
Third readers.
HB 1200 will be special ordered until the appropriate time then when it's here. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker?
Clerk will take the call. There being 130 members present, the House is still in session. Calendar of third reading House bills number 62. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 145, state finance and procurement, prevailing wage, stop work orders.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 96 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 145, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 496, Commission on the Establishment of a Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just very briefly, I want to highlight that what we'll be doing with this bill is setting aside $25 million to implement a family medical leave insurance program, which will ultimately result, we expect, in significant expenses to be borne by our business community, much of which is still recovering from the pandemic. So I'll be voting no. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker,
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
I just had a quick question for the floor leader.
Committee Chair.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are some of the funds coming from the employee as well?
I'm sorry?
Or the funds that are going to fund the program, I guess you could say, are coming from the employer and the employee?
At this point, no funds are coming from either party. This is an implementation plan, and part of it is setting up a commission to find out what a fair and viable split would be to create the fund that we need.
Okay. So this was a little different than, I guess, the Senate side was slightly different, or no?
We are not the Senate, correct?
All right. Thank you. Good point. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 96 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 496, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 625, Commission to Study the Healthcare Workforce Crisis in Maryland Establishment.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 126 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 625, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 667, Harford County Alcoholic Beverages Class B Beer, Wine, and Liquor Licenses, Restaurants.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 129 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 667, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 696, Public Utilities Electric School Bus Pilot Program.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 97 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 696, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 836, Public Schools Student Athletics Requirements and Emergency Action Plans.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 122 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 836, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading
Madam
House
Speaker.
bills.
Madam Speaker, vote change, please.
Gentleman from Garrett.
I'd like to change House Bill 145 from yea to no.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It must be going around. House Bill 145, from green to red. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Vote change House Bill 496 to red. Thank you.
Gentleman from Kent.
Kent, Madam Chair, House Bill 696 from red to green.
Gentleman from Wycomico.
Madam Speaker, thanks. House Bill 496 from green to red.
Any other vote changes?
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you. House 496 as well to red. Thank you.
Any other vote changes? Calendar of third reading House Bills number 63. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 176, Court Service of Process, Fees Collected by Sheriff.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 116 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 176, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 178, Public Health Cottage Food Businesses Annual Revenues.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded the vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 178, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 559, Probation Before Judgment, Probation Agreements, Probation Not Deportation.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the floor leader please rise for a few questions?
Floor leader.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Good evening. My good friend and former prosecutor from Prince George's County.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. So I want to understand this bill. It is technical. At the beginning of it, the premise of this bill is so that if someone is in a situation with, let's say, paperwork issues related to immigration, and they happen to go before a court, and they get what's called a probation before judgment, a PBJ, but in order to get a PBJ, you have to do one of two things. You either have to admit guilt, which would be a violation of that immigration issue, or the court has to find sufficient facts to find you guilty, even if you don't admit it, and that would also be a violation. And so what this bill does is it is attempting to address that situation so that someone who, let's say, the courts would like to give probation, but they don't want to violate their immigration status. Is that correct?
That's one aspect of the bill. It's definitely, we're changing it that it would be a justification on the finding of facts, but someone who would want this variation with this legislation on the probation before judgment statute could want it for multiple reasons. Sure. Whether it's federal employment, whether not even violating an immigration per se issue, but whether they want it for, they currently have a legal status and it would impact them in that way, like I said, for federal employment. So your premise is correct that there will be situations where someone would want to enter this for that reason, but there are multiple reasons why individuals would want this new variation of our statute.
So how many probation before judgments are issued in Maryland per year, ballpark?
That's a lot. I don't have that on top of my head, but thousands of different PBJs, I would say. I'm looking at my chair. Thousands of different ones are given out every year. Probation before judgments, for those that are not in courtrooms like some of us every day, are issued for many different misdemeanors. I know many individuals on this floor have received probation before judgments, whether that's speeding, so you don't have points on your license. Maybe you were young and you had a trespass issue, or you were consuming alcohol under the age of 21. Probation before judgments are issued every day in Maryland.
Okay. And it's a lot. I mean, there's probably tens of thousands of them per year in Maryland, so it's a lot. So I was reading through the testimony, and I noticed that our court, our state's highest court, the Court of Appeals, had a very lengthy response with concerns with this legislation. And one in particular is that with probation before judgment, the court has to find, findings of fact. They have to read certain rules and rights to the defendant. There's procedure, criminal procedure. The concern I have with this legislation is this is going to create a new category, a separate law where, in the judiciary's words, there's some concern whether there's some constitutional concern, quite frankly, because you're not requiring the defendant to either admit guilt, you're not requiring the court to find guilt, and so how are you going to hold a defendant, one of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Marylanders that get probation before judgment in their state, how are you going to hold them accountable if you haven't found them guilty? How are you going to hold them accountable if they don't admit guilt? It's very concerning.
We're going to hold them accountable because the bill encompasses that. So the amendments that were placed on the bill state, amendment number 2 that was offered and accepted on second reader, that all conditions under law would qualify on this probation before judgment as the one we have in our current statute. So if you violate probation on this form of, if you are going into this form of a PBJ, you can be found guilty by the court. The maximum penalty can be served upon you. It would be like any VOP, like any violation of probation. So all conditions would apply under this, and it is on the there's a justification and finding of facts, whether it's a proverb on what happened in the case or not. The court is finding a reason to enter the probation before judgment based on the facts, and the amendments offered helped solidify those concerns from our state's attorneys, from advocates, and the constitutional concerns. So all issues surrounding the probation before judgment, I think, were addressed by that amendment that the committee and the floor took.
So I'm just going to read this real quick, and then I'll yield with this. So this was straight from the Court of Appeals, which is Maryland's Supreme Court, for those that don't know. So they wrote, the bill creates a new way to place a person on probation without first having to enter a guilty finding, but it is unclear whether this new type of plea or new type of disposition, sentencing alternative. This is a serious and fundamental flaw in the bill, which must be addressed. The defendant must enter a plea before the court can simply proceed to sentencing. The court is required to conduct a full examination of the defendant on the record to ensure that the defendant is freely and voluntarily entering the plea with a full understanding of the nature of the charge and the consequences of the plea. These are rudimentary and fundamental constitutional principles. And again, I only bring this up because, in my opinion, if I was a defendant and I had a good attorney, a good defense attorney, like many of our constituents in here, some good defense attorneys in here, and I was lucky enough to get this new type of probation, I would never admit to anything. I wouldn't follow probation. I wouldn't care because I didn't admit to being guilty. They didn't find me guilty on the record. The way I see it is it's concerning for the tens of thousands or near 100,000 PBJs we give per year that these people can get this quasi-probation without any accountability. That's my concern. And I think I share the same concern as the Court of Appeals. I just want to put that on the record.
Sure, and for my good friend from Frederick, you are talking to a good defense attorney, and I will tell you that you are admitting in the fact that you are waiving your right to appeal. That's what the bill says. You are accepting the terms and the condition of the judgment and your probation. You are submitting to the court that you are accepting all consequences laid out by the state's attorney and what the judge wants to give you. And let me add to this, when you're entering a probation before judgment, that is given by the judge. It is not something, and my good prosecutor friends on the floor know, it's not something they can guarantee. It is helpful when a state's attorney says, defendant A, yes, if you do this, I'd be willing to submit to a probation before judgment. But any judge in the state of Maryland can decide to give it to you or not. That is a risk that you take once you enter that plea agreement. And any good defense attorney, this good defense attorney knows that I talk to the state, I talk to the judge, so that I'm giving the individual the full picture of what they're getting involved with, and that we're getting into this plea deal because the judge has indicated that a probation before judgment will be issued in that case. Everything that you do when you're doing your plea that's delineated in this statute is the same, pretty much parallel to our the older version of our PBJ statute, in which you're waiving all those rights. So the accountability is there. And I think that interpretation, I don't know if that was issued before the amendments were adopted in this case, and I think that it really addresses all concerns.
I enjoy this conversation.
Me too.
I would just say this, and just to reiterate, so unlike a probation before judgment, I'm admitting guilt, or they're finding that there are enough facts to prove me guilty. And so the probation is attached to those facts. So if there's a violation of probation, they're like, don't forget you admitted guilt. Don't forget we found enough evidence to find you guilty when we gave you the probation. And therefore, if you violate the probation, this will not disappear. So for those of you who don't know, the benefit of a probation for judgment is that if there's no additional violations, it kind of disappears. It comes off case search, et cetera. It's probably a good thing, right? My concern here is the defendant's going to say, well, you didn't find me guilty. I didn't admit to being guilty. So I'm not violating anything. And on top of it, God forbid I appeal this, the Court of Appeals has already ruled that there's constitutional issues.
Delegate, I'll just refer you to what I just said 5 minutes ago. You're waiving your right to an appeal. Any good defense attorney, as this one, would not take a client on saying that they didn't violate their probation, because it's already on record that there was enough facts justifying a finding in which, whatever case that it was, you were issued a probation before judgment. And let me remind you, all Marylanders can enter this type of probation before judgment. And as I said, the Maryland State Bar Association, our State's Attorneys Association, all have been consulted, and even the good Judiciary Committee has been hearing this bill for the last 4 years in order to make sure every constitutional concern was addressed.
So the last thing I'll say is this. You're basically saying that this bill would allow the courts to put someone on probation without finding them guilty, without them admitting they're guilty, and that is somehow enforceable.
And we do that every day, whether it's an Alford plea, a nolle contendere plea. That's already happening in Maryland law. It's in the statute. That's happening every day. You do that whether you're doing a plea, a proffered on a not guilty, and just a reading of the facts. That's happening every day in Maryland courts right now, Delegate.
Well, but they're finding that there's enough facts to prove guilt. That's the difference.
They're finding a justification of facts, yes.
They're not doing that in this bill, is my point.
They are finding a justification of facts in this bill, Delegate.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 87 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 559, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 563, Insurance Surplus Lines, Brokers, Policy Fees.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 128 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 563, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 585, Baltimore County Orphans Court Judges and Surviving Spouses Pensions.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 128 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 585, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 622, Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard and Renewable Energy Credits, Offshore Wind.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 100 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 622, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 64. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 88, Electric Distribution System Planning and Required Labor Standards.
Is on third reading and final passage. The Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the floor leader please rise just for a moment to clarify? Thank you.
Floor Leader.
I know there were some amendments to the bill, and I'm sorry if I missed this yesterday. I just wanted to clarify before I cast a vote. Does the bill still include a requirement that investor-owned utilities have to pay prevailing wage for certain construction activities related to their operations?
The amended bill requires those labor standards for projects that are done with the federal funds.
Okay, but not any other projects, so if a company simply wanted to do some reconstruction or expansion of their facility, their plant, their lines that had been granted by the PSC, they wouldn't have to pay prevailing wage on those?
Unless they're funded by federal funds, that's correct.
And what about the requirement, is it still in the bill that the Public Service Commission has to adopt regulations promoting both decarbonization and labor standards in all elements of, I think the words were electric grid modernization? Is that still part of the bill, either element of that?
Decreasing greenhouse gas emissions, I think, is the word that we have there instead of decarbonization. Greenhouse gas reduction. Labor standards is no longer in the list of goals that need to be promoted through distribution grid planning.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I will be voting red on the bill, but I at least appreciate that maybe there's been some clarification.
Thank you.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 88, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 107, Cooperative Housing Corporations, Condominiums, and Homeowners Associations Reserve Studies statewide.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 96 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 107, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 424, Constitutional Officers' Salaries.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 93 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 424, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 568, Real Estate Associate Brokers and Salespersons Compensation Payment from Title Insurance Producer.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 128 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 568, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1254, Maryland State Board of Contract Appeals Positions Law Clerks.
Recognizing the is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate in recognizing a minority?
Thank you,
leader?
Madam Speaker. Will the floor leader rise again to perhaps answer a question that way? Thank you.
Floor
Thank you,
leader.
my friend. This bill, I think the Maryland State Board of Contract Appeals certainly needs law clerks. The judges there, it's very helpful to have law clerks generally to help you. Does this bill require that the law clerks be specifically hired from specific law schools still?
This bill actually does. It requires them to be hired specifically from University of Maryland School of Law, University of Baltimore School of Law, and Howard University School of Law.
I'm a proud graduate of the University of Maryland School of Law. My mother and my deceased stepfather, proud graduates of the University of Baltimore School of Law, and Howard University has a wonderful law school. So there's certainly no question about the validity of those. But to your knowledge, do we do this for any other position? You know, district courts in our state have law clerks, circuit courts, most circuit court judges have law clerks. Every judge at the appellate courts have law clerks. Do we mandate that they hire their law clerks from specific law schools at any other level of our judicial system?
I do not know whether or not we've mandated that with, through a bill before. I can only speak to this bill that we have before.
I appreciate that, and I'm not trying to play gotcha with that. I'm 99% positive, that's why I asked, maybe I missed, I'm 99% positive that we don't, and there's some very good reasons for that, obviously, and so that's why I vote against the bill. I appreciate you answering the questions. I think it's great for the Board of Contract Appeals to make sure that they have law clerks. I'm just not sure why, for the very first time, we're mandating that specific people essentially be hired from specific law schools for these positions. Thank you.
Is there any further? The gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My understanding is that Maryland does only have 2 law schools. So those are both included in the bill. But then I see DC in here. Don't they have several other law schools? George Washington, Georgetown. I mean, how many do they have there in DC? American?
Floor
If I
leader.
can. Sure, I'm sure there are other law schools in DC. However, if you're looking at the state of Maryland and you want to talk about law schools specifically for historically black colleges and universities, there really are none. And so this actually goes outside of the state to DC to actually look at Howard University and make sure that we have some diversity in how we bring on law clerks, at least for the Board of Contract Appeals.
Does the University of Baltimore, is that not diversified at all?
It's not a HBCU, no.
It's not, but I think anyone can go to that school, right?
Anyone can go to that school.
All right.
I'm talking about I'm talking about HBCUs. Anybody can go to any school they want to. Specifically for a historically black college and university, for them to have a law school in the state of Maryland, there is none. And so looking outside of the state of Maryland, Howard University is that law school that we're looking at for the diversity.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to vote no on this bill. I think if we're going to include DC, we should include all the schools from DC. We're including all the schools in Maryland. But even so, I think it's unnecessary. People could go to get their law degree. You know, we have a shortage of people trying to apply for these types of jobs. Why would we limit it to just these 3 colleges? That doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change your vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1254, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House of 1400, Morgan State University, increasing bond principal amount.
Is on 3rd reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change your vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 127 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1400, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1451, Housing and Community Development, Business Projects and the Business Development Program, Financial Assistance.
Is on 3rd reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change your vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 127 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1451, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar
Madam
of
Speaker.
third.
Over here.
Yes.
Sorry, Madam
Young lady
Speaker.
From Baltimore City.
I'd like to change my vote on HB 424 from yay to excused. Thank you.
Any other vote changes?
Madam Speaker.
Recognize the gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My button failed to work on HB 585, and I'd like to be recorded in the green.
Gentleman from Montgomery.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. HB 682 from nay to yay. Thank you.
Gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. HB 496, yay to nay.
Any other vote changes? Okay. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 65. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 998, Human Services Silver Energy Savers Program and Energy Assistance Fund.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 103 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 998, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1049, Maryland Trust Act, Trustee Liability, released by interested parties.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 127 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1049, having received a constitutional majority,
Madam
is
Speaker.
declared passed. Gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My button didn't work on 127.
Put your mask on. And your jacket. Please be properly attired on the floor.
Much better. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My button didn't work on the last bill, 127. I'd like to be recorded in the green. 998.
Any other vote changes? Clerk, read the next bill.
We're on 1091. Make sure. What was the last one? 1091. House Bill 1091, State Retirement and Pension System Investment Division Compensation.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 117 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1091, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1115, Baltimore City Alcoholic Beverages Licenses and Outdoor Table Service Privileges.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 129 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1115, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1208, Health Occupations Healthcare Workforce Expansion.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 128 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1208, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1238,
Madam
Places
Speaker.
of Public Accommodation Motion Picture Houses, captioning.
My button didn't work on 1254. I'd like to be recorded in the green. 1208.
Gentleman from Montgomery. Who was speaking? You?
Yeah, thank you, Madam
okay.
Speaker. I'd like to be recorded in the green on House Bill 1208. My button didn't work.
Okay. Gentle lady from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 998, I'd like to be recorded in the red, please.
Any other vote changes? HB, where am I at? 1238. Gentleman from Talbot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On the bill?
On the bill.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a tough bill. In fact, in our committee during the vote session, I believe we spent at least as much time on this bill, if not more time, than we did debating the Family Medical Leave Bill. And it's interesting, the hearing was compelling. This is the first year that I think our committee heard this subject matter, so even without the world we live in, I believe this is a tough bill, but we do live in a different world, and we do have to pay attention when we put regulations in place, the time with which we're doing this. So if it were not for the fact that we just got through COVID and these theaters were literally shut down, I mean, and frankly, in addition to that, at home, on Netflix and other sources to watch movies, they were putting movies that you would have watched in the movie theater in your home. And at the same time, as we're coming out of this pandemic and the theaters are opening back up, this is one of the last places where people are feeling comfortable to sit for up to 3 hours to watch a movie. This is also a time that we're dealing with significant inflation. People don't have as much discretionary dollars to spend as they did, frankly, 6 months ago. And we are dealing with a geopolitical war that is affecting people, and I think it will continue to affect the citizens in our state of Maryland. So with the context of that conversation, does it make sense for us to put in place a requirement on these theater houses, and not just some, but rather all, that we take away their ability to sell as many seats as they can, as often as they can? This bill creates a requirement for open captioning, and if you're deaf, it's a great bill. And I'd say to you that on balance, this is the kind of bill, if it weren't for the world we're living in right now, perhaps I could see the virtue to having this sort of thing. I did say in the committee, and I love to go to the movie theater. It costs $15, $20 to go. It's not necessarily cheap. I do like buying popcorn. That's $10. The drinks, $6 or $7. So this ends up being, for my wife and I, about a $50 or $60 date night, so to speak. But I went to a recent viewing of I think it was Spider-Man, and there may have been 15 or 20 people in the entire movie theater. And I'm a business guy, and I know what it takes to make a profit, but I'm sitting and looking at the size of the theater. I'm thinking about what does it take to break even, let alone make money. I don't know how they're doing it, to be candid with you. There has to be some federal benefit, something that's happening that's allowing these theaters to stay in business, because it can't be just merely the fact that they're looking at ticket sales and being able to turn a profit. So on this bill, is it doing everything that we can and should be doing to make sure that the theaters stay in business in every market that we have them serve? And my concern is that on the margins, incrementally, this is the kind of thing that probably doesn't make sense at this time. Again, this is the first time I'm aware that our committee has heard a bill like this. So even without those times, putting these sort of mandates in place are difficult at best, but we're not in that situation. So, Madam Speaker, on the bill at this time, I'm a no on this bill. We did try to do some amendments to help some of the smaller theaters get through this. But at the end of the day, we didn't take those amendments, and hopefully the Senate will come through and take a revisit of the issue. But right now, I'm a no. Thank you.
Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask my colleagues to support the committee in this bill. This was it's heartbreaking to think that we can't help our hearing impaired and our deaf people without collapsing an economy, because that's the doom and gloom we heard. Although Hawaii has had it since 2015, and their numbers just increased every year. Now, granted, the opposition sent us the numbers from 2019 and 20, and if y'all remember back then, something dramatic happened. And they tanked, you're right. But it had nothing to do with this open caption, closed caption system. The point is this: the feds require certain things. The problem is, and we've heard testimony, you go in there, the masks don't fit the little girls. The little things that they put that you have, the closed caption systems, you have to constantly look down and up and down and up. Basically, the hearing impaired can't go to these movies. They can't enjoy them the same time we can. We treat them like second-class citizens. Again, it is heartbreaking to think that we can't help the handicapped and the people have the same access we can. It's not going to collapse the economy. These theaters are struggling now because of the pandemic. They will come back with the help of our hearing impaired, because you know what? They're not going for free, and they also eat popcorn. I ask you to treat them as the citizens that they are, give them the access, be proud to support this bill, because again, I understand that that we're living in this tension now with our businesses just breaking out. But also, we've seen no analytical data to suggest that it's going to hurt the movie theaters. We've heard hyperbole, but the only data we have is from Hawaii, and it says it worked for them just fine. Allow these citizens to participate with us at our movie theaters. Please pass this bill.
Gentleman from Eastern Shore.
I'm sorry, Madam Speaker. The point I was making about the popcorn is that I'm a business guy, and I know how theaters make money, and I'm telling you that 3 or 4 years ago, before the pandemic, you go to a screening of an opening night major hit and the theater is full. I'm telling you right now, people are not comfortable walking into a movie theater. I actually didn't discuss any of the statistics. I didn't take any of the industry statistics because frankly, I don't think it's important to the particular conversation we're having now. The truth is, we don't know. We just don't know. And I believe that the no vote that I'm taking on this is not without all of the concerns that the chairman mentioned, but it is to simply say to you this, that when we pass legislation on businesses, when we put burdens and regulations and obligations on businesses, it should be at least with some general concept as to what conditions the market and the economy's in. We just passed a gas tax holiday for a reason not unlike what I'm discussing here, which is now is maybe not the right time to be collecting record taxes on the backs of our citizens. Look, every motion picture house in our country is federally regulated. Those open captioning devices are federally mandated, and they are held to a very high standard as to the quality of the equipment and the fact that it works. Some of the testimony, to be fair, that I heard during the hearing spoke to the fact that folks who are deaf come to the theater and the equipment doesn't work, it's not available. You know, they get frustrated, they leave the theater, they go to the front of the desk and they ask to get the equipment fixed, they go back into the theater and they've missed 20 or 30 minutes of the movie. That's a federal issue that can be resolved federally. Here, all I'm saying is that my no vote is not necessarily the policy, but it's the timing of this policy. So, Madam Speaker, thank you.
Madam Speaker. From Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I just wanted to thank the chairman and the sponsor of the bill for bringing this bill. Some may recall in 2020, this was my bill, House Bill 1523, and because of COVID, it died. And the work that's been done, I want to make something very clear why I support this. In my district, there's a large deaf community, and the movie theaters that I've talked with, they already provide closed captioning. The problem is they had two issues. One would be the opening week would be too packed for them to fit in the extra movies. And then the second concern was just simply accommodating when to play these movies during business hours. And those have both been, in my view, addressed in this bill. If you look carefully at it, it says that the first week of the opening, when everything is packed, just like my good friend discussed now, they're not mandated if they're having an issue with spacing to do this. And secondly, it just simply accommodates the least among us. I mean, we're talking about people that, you know, were born deaf or that have in some, for some reason, inability to participate like the rest of us in movies. This is not a financial burden on the industry. It only applies to chain ownerships or multiple ownerships of theaters. So for all those reasons, I respect my good friends who have explained their concerns, but for all those reasons, I gratefully appreciate the bill and I'll be supporting it.
Gentleman from Cecil.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just had a quick question for the floor leader. I definitely want to consider supporting this bill.
Committee Chair.
Yes.
Just real quickly, how would this relate to like smaller boutique, maybe foreign films, or you know the Rocky Horror Picture Show, things like that? Are they impacted by this bill?
You have to have only at least two theaters. It's the small ones aren't going to be impacted, obviously.
Okay.
Now, I will say this. I would like as many theaters to do this as possible.
Sure.
I'm not trying to, I would love them to all join in voluntarily, even if they're not required to, because the closed captioning isn't just for the hard of hearing. It's also for the people that have English as a second language, that are trying to, young kids, things of that nature. It does benefit us all.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you for that explanation, and it sounds like that's a hold harmless. Thank you.
Is there any further debate?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the majority whip.
The chair yield for a question.
Sure.
How many times a week will they show this closed caption?
Twice.
Twice a week.
After that week of premiere.
And how often, and also, who else benefits? The other minorities benefit?
Anybody that speaks English as a second language benefits. Anybody trying to learn English benefits. Anybody who might be over the age of 50 or in the military and have hard of hearing benefits. I use closed caption on my TV at home on a regular basis. If you have people that are speaking and they're using speaking different languages or different accents, it's beneficial to all of us. I think the worry here is that people think that if they have to see closed captions, that it will turn away people. They won't come, they won't want to watch. I disagree. The statistics don't show that.
And the contraptions that they give them to use, half the time I think they testified that they don't work or there's some issue?
That's correct. They're not only, if they do work, they're unwieldy, but a lot of times they don't work because they're being passed from person to person. They're for a single member only. And again, they're broken, and like my good colleague said, you spend 30 minutes trying to get it fixed and you miss the better part of the movie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Madam Speaker, for those reasons, I ask the body to please support this bill. It's a great bill, for not just for the deaf, but for those that are also minorities in this country that are trying to learn English in a proper way or trying to enjoy a movie that's not in their language. So for those reasons, I ask you to support this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 108 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1238, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1285, Maryland Electricians Act, revisions.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 123 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1285, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 66. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 866, Genetic Information Privacy, Consumer Protection, and Forensic Genealogy.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 103 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 866, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 911, Health Occupation Psychologist Licensure Qualifications.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 129 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 911, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 912, Health Insurance Provider Panels, Coverage for Non-Participation.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 129 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 912, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed.
Madam Speaker?
Recognizing the gentlelady from Prince George's, Anna Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On House Bill 911, I would like to be recorded in the green, please. Thank you.
Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 965, Civil Actions, Tortuous Injury or Death of Pet, Compensatory Damages, Buddy's Law.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 126 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 965, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 994, Public Utilities Underground Facilities One-Call System.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 994, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1034, State Board of Examiners of Nursing Home Administrators, renaming licensure of assisted living managers and penalties.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change the vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 129 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1034, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Special order calendar.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Prince George.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Vote change House Bill 965 from green to red.
Gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 866 to green and House Bill 998 to green.
The gentleman from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Vote change on 1285 to green.
Any other vote changes? Special order calendar number 48. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1200, Environment Permit Applications, Environmental Justice Screening. Favorable report is amended, adopted.
Recognizing the maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have an amendment on the bill, but I would yield to my colleagues who want to go first. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from
Thank you,
Cal.
Madam Speaker. I do have an amendment at the desk that I'll introduce first, if I can talk.
We can't hear you. Can you put it closer to your mouth, please?
Yes.
Can't understand you, rather.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's amendment number 763222/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment, Madam Speaker.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I do have a couple of questions for the sponsor or the floor leader, if I may. Probably the floor leader.
Recognizing the vice chair of the committee.
Thank you. And also, Delegate, if you do have a copy of the amendment, we would love to see it.
It just came in, so I apologize. I mean, it came from DLS. If you want to wait, you can grab one from the clerk if you want, because I'm stuck back here.
We'll give you a copy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll give you plenty of time to read it because I just had some questions first anyway. So.
Sure.
Okay. There's the tool, this EJ tool. It's an environmental justice tool that is going to be used when you apply to MDE for a permit. That's correct so far, right?
Well, it's for permits for facilities where public notice is required, and we discussed earlier, thanks to the help of the majority leader, that those are really the most significant facilities, hazardous substance facilities, hazardous material facilities, et cetera. So it is not all situations where a permit has to be applied for.
And what EJ tool are we using? That's really what I'm trying to get clear here on
Well,
the floor.
it is a tool that MDE will develop, and there's certain criteria that are listed in the bill. I mean, those are criteria that are used by really all EJ screens around the country. But MDE has flexibility as to what tool it's going to develop. It might partner with the University of Maryland, which has developed what's called an EJ screen, which is already online. It could adapt that. It could develop its own. But MDE is tasked with developing this.
So the EJ screen is the one that's currently, that you can click to, is the one developed by University of Maryland.
That's correct.
Okay. That's what I was trying to clarify. And then if you pull up the screen, because really this is all we have to go by is the University of Maryland screen, because even if MDE wants to develop their own system, unfortunately, if you pass this bill, we really don't know what they're going to do other than using this current EJ screening system that College Park has developed themselves. So that's really all I can go on. On one of the slides of the PowerPoint presentation, it says scoring methodology borrowed from Cal EnviroScreen. I guess it's from the University of California, I'm guessing, or certainly from a a school in the University of California. It says the EJ screen would include, among other things, average exposures and environmental effects times the average of sensitive populations and socioeconomic factors equals the Enviro screen score. And so I'm assuming that that means the higher the score, the more impacted that community was or would be.
Is that, if that's the California screen, I couldn't comment on it.
Okay, so would it be then a higher score that would be bad or a low score?
Again, it depends on the screening system that MDE develops. What I've seen in other screening tools is, yes, the higher the score, the more environmental impact, the more that a particular census tract has been impacted environmentally.
And when the score is provided using the tool, because you're applying for a permit that requires public notice with MDE, then in that particular case, is there some sort of factor of the EJ system that would maybe result in you being denied a permit?
No.
No.
This, and I guess it's important to clarify, what this bill does, it just requires public notice of the EJ score as derived from the EJ tool that MDE will develop. It doesn't require anything beyond this additional information to be provided on the public notice. It provides no authority to block or stop or slow down a project proposal. It is simply notice.
So I did check with the DLS and the bill writer, and what I found out was that if the bill were to pass, then MDE could indeed use this tool, among other things, to potentially, if they adopted the regulations, deny a permit.
Well, I guess it's important to point out MDE already uses EJ screen in a lot of its assessments.
Except that this bill is much more clear because it's using more environmental justice actual factors, and then it is giving broad latitude to MDE.
I disagree with your assessment. It is the same structure and approaches in the EJ tool that MDE is currently using.
And would MDE be charging if there is a high EJ score?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Would MDE be charging an additional fee if there's a high EJ score?
No, no. I mean, there's no requirement, there's no authorization for MDE to do anything.
But when they change regulations,
except validate that the score that has been provided is indeed the score, provided under its EJ's tool.
So what this amendment does, and it's certainly not a gotcha amendment, it's quite the opposite, because certainly plenty of people apply for MDE permits. In Maryland, you have to apply for an MDE permit for just about everything. And the amendment's very straightforward. It basically says this: when deciding whether to issue a license or permit under this article, or to impose a condition on the issuance of a license or permit, the department may not use the EJ score for the census tract where the applicant is seeking the permit as a determinative factor. So in other words, the department still has plenty of factors to use when you apply for a permit with MDE, where there is a public notice required. And all this is saying instead is you have to provide the EJ information and the score, so we're not getting rid of that. The amendment simply says that they can't deny your application on the EJ score. Cannot be a determinative factor for denying it. They can deny it for the other reasons that MD has, but not for this one.
Well, Delegate, I would urge that the body resist this amendment. This bill just deals with public notice of what the EJ score is. It has no bearing on and has nothing to say on MDE's determination or decision-making process. In fact, as I noted, MDE is already using an EJ screen for a number of purposes, but this bill has nothing to do with MDE's authority or decision-making power. This is just public notice. So I would say that this amendment goes well beyond the scope of our bill and should be resisted.
So another question then, certainly appreciate that. If it if it's just about public notice, then what is it that the public needs to know that's different? So the public, there's already public notice that's required for many MDE permits. How does this change that? That's what I'm just so confused about.
The public generally does not have information that would be represented by the EJ score. This would be something that has to be provided in the public notice, this number, an explanation of the indicators that relate to it. That's information that generally communities don't have access to, they don't get. So by requiring this very straightforward, simple process of saying that the EJ score has to be provided in the notice, that's information that typically communities wouldn't have access to.
And that information that you're referring to is information of past transgressions.
We're not even saying transgressions. We're saying the environmental impact, the current environmental impact of pollution exposures. It could be, I don't want to characterize them as transgressions, but it is the environmental reality that that particular census tract is facing.
So I did do some research on that. The EJ score would be based on the pollution that was already there prior to the applicant applying to MDE. So you're asking the applicant to put this information in there as if the applicant is the one that's responsible. And so what the bill does, in my opinion, is it creates a nexus for potential lawsuits. And I think that's concerning, but go ahead.
Yeah, I would just disagree because there's nothing in the notice that in any way would indicate that the applicant for the particular permit is the cause of this, of the factors of the pollution that's factored into the EJ score. In fact, I mean, since the applicant hasn't built their facility yet, there'd be no way that it could have in any way contributed. So I would say that there's certainly nothing that under this notice process that would contribute to that perception. And again, anyone who's reviewing the score wouldn't think, oh, this applicant has created the situation, because again, their facility hasn't been built yet.
Got it. Thank you, Floor Leader. Madam Speaker, on the amendment.
On the amendment.
So the amendment is pretty straightforward. It says that when deciding whether to issue a license or permit under this article, or to impose a condition on the issuance of a license or permit, the department may not use the EJ score for the census tract where the applicant is seeking the permit as a determinative factor. In other words, the department can't deny the permit based on this score. And to me, this makes good sense because imagine if, for example, we were fortunate enough in this state to have Intel build chips in this state. Unfortunately, Ohio is getting that company because we're trying to repatriate these companies' manufacturing facilities back to the United States from China, as well as from Taiwan for all the obvious reasons. So if that company were to apply here and they wanted to put this facility in a disadvantaged community, they would have a high EJ score, which would mean that they would have a very high negative score over something they had nothing to do with. Yet, Intel, of course, if they were to be making this facility, making these chips here in Maryland, would have to use an enormous amount of water because that's what is required to make them. These are the same chips that go inside of Teslas and other EVs, just about everything, quite frankly, which is why we need them. Most economists believe that it's the gold standard, so we'd be great to have these companies here, but the concern is, and it's a good concern, it's a legitimate concern, is that permits will be denied based on this particular bill, and a company wouldn't even consider coming here because of this particular bill. In fact, I know that for a fact they're not going to come here with this kind of nonsense, in my opinion, which is why I have this common sense amendment. The amendment really doesn't hurt the bill at all. Still have to provide the EJ score, but it just can't be used as the factor to determine that you do not get a permit from MDE. Common sense amendment. Common sense amendment that opens Maryland's doors for business so that we can have intel, so that we can have these other companies who are trying to repatriate their manufacturing facilities of high technology equipment into Maryland from China and from Taiwan before it's too late. And these kinds of bills make that harder. And so, Madam Speaker, for all those reasons, I move this amendment. Thank you.
The Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would urge the body to say no to this amendment. Again, the purpose of this bill is simply notice to communities. It has no bearing on the MDE's decision-making process. And in fact, MDE already uses EJ Screen for a number of purposes. Other states are using EJ Screens or comparable tools. So I would say that for all those reasons that we should vote down this amendment. Thank you.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose?
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 593522/1.
Amendment number 1.
So be considered reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So we just had a little bit of a policy discussion on EJ Screen and Score. And you know, look, when this bill was read across the desk, when it talks about the first line in the fiscal notes talks about an environmental justice score, it's always unsettling to me when the government is scoring property and homes based on the demographics of the people that live inside those homes. So I started researching this a little bit, and this is what's so troublesome about crossover. This is my favorite week in the legislature. So busy and everything. I mean, I like it. But some of these bills are just really rushed, and I know some people might be regretting their vote for this. Because when you go and look and research this, and as the floor leader just said, we're already using this tool, and MDE may be developing a new tool, which I'm happy to hear that they are. This current tool was made by Maryland Commission on Climate Change. And when you click and go to their website, it opens up their Twitter feed. And you look at the Twitter feed for these people, and it's like there's some pretty crazy stuff on there. The one thing I thought was really crazy is their decision over the Biden administration. Now, I think me and Joe Biden, we probably don't see eye to eye on a lot of policies, but I think the Biden administration kind of got this right. It took race out of their EJ tool, and the current tool that Maryland uses, it's, if anybody wants to look it up, their Twitter handle is CEEJH Center. They did not appreciate that. They made a tweet that said, this was a political decision. We must not ignore that the health and justice implications of the Biden administration is making on a race-neutral tool when all science and research is explicitly clear. Race is the biggest predictor of environmental hazard. And that sounds completely ridiculous to me. And I'm glad the Biden administration fixed it. So the amendment that I have at the desk is the EJ score does not include indicators related to race, color, religion, sex, family status, natural origin, marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. Some of you may recognize that phrase from fair housing. It makes a lot of sense to me that we shouldn't be discriminating on people when they purchase a home or when they rent a home. I don't know why we would be discriminating against people when MDE issues a permit. That doesn't sound fair. So this, I believe, is a very well-intended amendment, and I hope the committee considers that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I guess we have to have a disagreement as to what the federal administration is doing with respect to the use of race in its EJ screen, because I'm looking at the EPA's website in their section as to what goes into their EJ score, and it specifically says that EJ screen includes an index that is based on the above demographic indicators. Demographic index is based on the average of two demographic indicators, low income and people of color. So race and individual, as to whether individuals are of color, is considered by the federal government in their EJ screen. And again, it's, as we've discussed, these demographic factors are important because certain groups are more susceptible to environmental pollution because of perhaps their lack of access to health care, or because because, for example, disability is mentioned in the Maker's Amendment. I would think disability includes those with health disabilities. Those individuals are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of pollution. And then also the Maker's, this particular amendment, in addition to taking out information with respect to demographic data, also would require the taking out of information on pollution burden exposure and pollution burden environmental effects. And I would say those are two of the crucial indicators of an EJ score. So this amendment would basically gut the EJ scoring process, which we're saying MDE needs to develop a tool for, and again, which would just be the subject of public notice. So for all those reasons, I'd urge a no vote on this amendment.
The maker of the amendment.
Madam Speaker, I press the amendment because it's common sense. We're talking about the Biden administration changed their contents from race to communities of disadvantage and looked at economic data and actual land mass and the property, not the race and color and religion and sex and family status of the people that live in those houses. And look, I realize the bill is a notification bill, but this is important that we get this right, because often we'll hear that, oh, this is just a notification bill. And do you know what? Next year it'll be expanded. And then before you know it, in about 4 or 5 years, next time you go to do anything that requires an MDE permit, you'll be checking out this score. So if we don't fix this now and get ahead of it, this has wide range of consequences for misuse. And when it comes down to it, I just can't believe that the government would be looking at race as a factor of whether somebody should get a permit. That seems utterly crazy to me. So with that, Madam Speaker, I press the amendment.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I due respect to the gentleman, I think he's got it backwards here. So it is a well-established fact that in Maryland and throughout the United States, and actually throughout the world, pollution is concentrated in communities of color and low-income communities. It's a well-established fact. And there are a variety of reasons for it, not the least of which, frankly, is a question of political power. A wealthier community can often fight off a rubble landfill or an incinerator better than a poorer community. So the whole point of the EJ score is to identify that kind of discrimination and let the community know, hey, this may be an issue because we are concentrating facilities that have negative health effects potentially in these communities. And what this amendment does is it essentially says you can't do that. I mean, in the guise of trying to prevent discrimination. This amendment would prevent the identification of discrimination. It's the exact opposite of what the bill is intended to do. And so I would ask the body to reject the amendment.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think the majority leader might have it wrong. Because when you're talking about, we just had this conversation on the last amendment, when you're talking about EJ scoring, you're scoring race. That's not right. It's not right. I press the amendment, Madam Speaker.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will call the roll. The amendment fails.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Cecil.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I actually had some questions on the bill. The floor leader could yield. Thank you. I'm going to be a little selfish here and ask some questions that pertain to Cecil County specifically. We have one of the distinctions that I'm not very proud of. I think we have the #1 concentration of Superfund sites in the state. And the reason for that is because historically we're a lower income rural area bisected by 95. That was equidistance from Wilmington, Philadelphia, Baltimore, all these industrial areas. And back when dumping toxic things and hiding things and all the manufacturing that went along with it and getting rid of it was unregulated, a lot of that stuff found its way to Cecil. What we found is that no one's coming to clean those sites up. They're in many cases still there, they're remediated, they're contained, there's a cap, there's whatever, but they're still there. The only place we've really had success is when new industries want to come in because the land is still fairly cheap and they pay the remediation cost to get that property up to snuff so they can redevelop it. So my concern, and listening to the testimony, and I just looked this up on here, and I want to stay away from the race and all that stuff, just purely on the environmental aspects. It sounds like this could curtail companies from coming to Cecil County, buying that cheap land, incurring the cost to fix it up or to renovate it or to abate the brownfield, and stymie development. What would be your thoughts on that?
No, thank you for your question, Delegate. I guess my response is that this EJ score will have no bearing. We're not saying in this legislation that MDE must take into account the EJ score for the census tract in which the proposed facility is to be located. So this is just an issue of public notice so that communities who wouldn't normally have access to this type of EJ information would have it. I would think that in the hypothetical example that you mentioned, that the fact that a prospective facility operator, which would be subject to this legislation, it would be strongly in their favor that they said that they are willing to remediate past pollution. That's something that the community, as well as MDE, any other approval authority would say, that's great. That's another reason why we should consider, why we should likely approve this facility. So this screening process, again, in no way puts a thumb on the scale in terms of how a proposal would be considered.
Okay, and just a follow-up question, if I may. As I alluded to earlier, we're bisected by 95, and frankly, that generates a lot of air pollution that we can't control. And it's the gift and the curse. It brings commerce, it brings people and money, it also brings pollution. Would factors like that cause a negative score be factored in? I didn't really see anything on the website that would allude to that. How does something like that generates pollution go into this score?
Well, if there are high levels of particulate matter, for example, or any other air pollutant that would be considered under this EJ screen than if the pollution is just let's say that there's, large pieces of land on either side of the highway so that the pollution is, dissipates before it hits before it hits large communities, then it wouldn't have any sort of impact. If this pollution, this air pollution with its toxics is endemic, then it would be a factor in one of the indicators that would be reviewed, that one of the indicators that would be considered in this EJ screen.
I thank you for that answer. Just on the bill very quickly, I do have some concerns, and I think it might have a counter effect in places like where I represent. But I'm willing to do some more research on the bill, and I thank you for answering the questions.
Sure.
Gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a few quick questions, if I could, just for some clarity. Would this apply to dredging projects?
Vice Chair.
Stand by, please. Let me check.
No problem.
Hearing from council, it does not apply, and that seems to be confirmed by the listing of the types of permits that would be subject to this bill. Dredging operations are not listed there.
Okay, so no living shoreline, no breaks, no dredging.
That appears to be the case. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have amendment at the desk. Amendment number is 5433291/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move waive reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is just adds language to this bill because of a problem that we have in eastern Baltimore County. We have had problems with raw sewage being dumped into Back River and other tributaries, Bear Creek, Patapsco River, a lot of different areas. To give you a scenario, well, I'll explain to you what happened. We were celebrating the start of headworks for Back River wastewater treatment plant that would have stored sewage and overflow from Baltimore City. This was great because, whenever we have a bad storm, it would take the influent and hold it until after the storm so they could treat the influent and put it back into the river. We had a problem for years. Anytime it would rain severely, that Baltimore City's sewage would back up, come down to Jones Falls, come down into the inner harbor, wind up into the bay. So we were ecstatic. I mean, we spent over $500 million of taxpayers' money on this project. Back River Restoration cleans this area where a lot of this influent comes in. We have men working in the water. Not only that, we have people that swim in this area. We have Cox Point. We have several places that we swim in the area, and there's actually a couple of businesses that allow people to swim in the water. Unbeknownst to us, we didn't know that there was being raw sewage dumped into the rivers. That's unconscionable. We got kids from Baltimore City, Baltimore County, all around the state that come down to enjoy the waters in Baltimore County. How we found out about this, the media reported raw sewage being dumped into the bay by the treatment plant. It was alleged that fraud was reported. The numbers were fraudulently reported to MDE. So that's starting an investigation, and hopefully we got that resolved. We had a severe midge problem in the area because of the influent being dumped into the bay. Basically raw sewage. I know what I want to say, but I don't think you probably carry me out of here. This would create an oversight testing of a third-party approval by MDE if a wastewater treatment plant is not in compliance with their water treatment is not in compliance with their water discharge permit, their TMDLs. It would also require testing for midge larvae and discharge of midge larvae if they were not in compliance. It would also would require for sewage overflows, breaks in sewer pipes at wastewater treatment plants must be reported to local media and local legislators. And the reason for that is so we know that we're not putting our kids in the water swimming with influent. The independent inspector required on site until the independent inspector would be required to be on site until all the TMDLs are in compliance with the discharge permit. Madam Speaker, to give you a little history of what happened and why I'm so passionate about this. Last summer, I live on the water, I enjoy the water. Just before Christmas, I got sick, didn't realize what was going on. And I got a blood infection. They can't figure out where it was from, and I do believe it was from the water, because I'm in the water all the time working on the boat or whatever around the water. And I got sepsis. I almost died. And I'm thinking to myself, if they're putting raw sewage into the bay and not telling people, that's not acceptable. I mean, this is just a reporting. We just asked for reporting and oversight, and we want back the treatment plants to come in compliance with their discharge permits. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I want to express to the good delegate from Baltimore County, I'm so very sorry to the severe health condition that you had, and I can only imagine how terrible it must have been, and so very sorry about that. And I do want to thank you as well for giving me an advance copy of the amendment, and I've neglected to mention to the delegate from St. Mary's County as well. Thank you for advance notice. However, I would urge the body to resist this amendment. While the issues that the delegate from Baltimore County is discussing, are ones that are important, and certainly it had a very important, very significant impact, negative impact on you. This amendment deals with pollution violations. How to address pollution violations, whereas the bill that is before us, House Bill 1200, seeks to provide public notice in the permitting process. So it really is in a different category of issue area. I would also note that the amendment would likely have a significant fiscal note. Also, there is a separate bill, which will probably be coming before this body before crossover, which addresses and would require the Department of the Environment to provide much more frequent inspections of facilities when there is a violation of a discharge permit. So a significant part about the oversight and compliance that's required will be addressed through that legislation. And then lastly, I'll just say that MDE already requires wastewater treatment facilities to have an operator who's certified in water quality sampling. Their water quality samples are to be sent to an MDE certified lab, which is certified in testing, and then compliance is to be verified during inspections. Now, what I just said sort of begs the bigger point that MDE inspections have been woefully inadequate in a number of cases. And again, we will have that separate legislation the next day or so, which will address that. So for all those reasons, Madam Speaker, and again acknowledging, the challenges that the delegate from Baltimore County face because of improper discharge of pollution into nearby waters. Acknowledging all that, I still respectfully request a no vote on this amendment.
Thank you. Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to press this amendment. And, I was just thinking about the kids when they're swimming. We have a business that actually lets the kids get out and go into the water in the same creek. Now, according to all the information that I've received what happened when all this pollution was going into the bay, it was basically bad management. And I even wanted to actually have a third party come in and take over the treatment plant. I was told it couldn't be done. It's not acceptable. You're putting raw sewage into the bay. We fish, we live on the bay. We eat these fish. It's just not acceptable. And that's why I would press this amendment. And by the way, thank you for your concern. Sepsis is nothing to play with, but I'm fully recovered and doing great. Thank you for your concern.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change your vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you. My apologies. I meant to say House Bill 625 earlier to the red for a vote change.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you. I'm sure you remember the Waldron function. I think I said the wrong bill number. I was changing, I wanted to be recorded in the green for House Bill 1049. Thank you.
Special order calendar number 49. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1228, Natural Resources, Oysters, Spat, Shells, and Substrate. Favor board is amended. Adopted.
Recognizing the maker of the motion, the gentleman from Talbot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We worked very hard today to craft some amendments. This is a very complicated bill, and we got some amendments. However, they're not ready to debate. And so I'm going to leave them on the desk where I'm not going to offer them tonight. A Senate bill will come over that's identical to this one. And when we get these things the way they should be, then I'll offer them. But I don't want to drag the body through a debate over amendments that may not be quite where they should be. So I appreciate the floor leader's time and working with me, and I'm not going to press the amendments. Thank you. It was the Mac Mathias Award. He talked me out of it.
Are there any other amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none. Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the at the desk, 313326-1.
Amendment number 1.
Move waive reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
As we just discussed, the pollution that's coming down from some of our wastewater treatment plants, we have a commodity that everybody wants to dredge. And it's a commodity that we have lived with for years. This amendment would prevent the dredging of Man of War Shoal. It's historic. They're still dredging, they're still taking oysters off of there. It's a very fragile eco system right there, given the pollution that's coming into the bay through the wastewater treatment plants. We must protect the Man of War shoals. We have dredge shoals, we have dredge shells before in the upper bay near Pools Island, and it failed. We just recently planted 7.1 million spat on shell last year in the Man of War Shoal. So it's a living, working shoal. And it's very good that it's working given all the pollution's coming out. Hopefully it's cleaning up some of the pollution's coming out. Once they dredge it, it's gone. I believe it's going to be an adverse effect for that. And we met with local watermen, fishermen, and everybody that lives in the area, and anybody that has any interactions with the water, and they're all against it because they know what the possibilities is going to be. Everybody in my district come out against dredging the Man of War Shoal. And I would ask this amendment to be accepted. Even with the pollution, Man of War Shoal is still thriving. We don't want to hurt this. Thank you.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
I don't know who's speaking. Gentleman from Montgomery. Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I urge the body to resist this amendment. We do have two bills in committee which deal with this issue. One is to prohibit, just like this amendment would do, the dredging of man-o-war shoals. We also have a bill asking DNR to start the permit process on a list of 28 shoals around the bay. The committee's seen fit to advance neither one of those. It's a very important issue with a long history, and Delegate, thank you for providing us with the amendment ahead of time, but I do encourage the body to resist this amendment.
The maker of the amendment.
If I heard you correctly, did you say that you were not going to bring the bills out for stopping the dredging of Man-o-War Shoal? Did I hear you correctly? It's hard to hear over here.
Yeah, I urge to resist this amendment.
Well, no, the question I'm asking you is, you have two bills, you had two bills in to prohibit dredging of the Man-o-War Shoal, am I correct?
No, I'm sorry. One prohibits dredging of man-o-war shoals. One encourages DNR to get permits to dredge other shoals. So that's on two opposite sides of the issue.
Okay, the question I have is, the one that's going to prohibit the dredging of Man-o-War Shoal, is that going to come before this body?
It's still in committee.
Madam Speaker.
Chairman of the committee.
This is admittedly a very complicated issue. We literally have watermen on both sides of it. And it is very difficult to really see our way clear to passing one bill or the other when you have such a division of opinion. And it's the reason those bills are probably not going to be voted on and are not going to come out here is it's not really clear to us which position is correct.
Thank you. That's why I brought up what was happening at our wastewater treatment plants. We have a shoal that's surviving with all this influent going across it. We need to protect this shoal. You know, I live not too far from here. I rockfish there. We do all kind of fishing, and it's still an active shoal. And that's why we're asking to take and prohibit any dredging from that shoal, because it's still living. And I believe the dredging of this would actually be adverse to the shoal. I know it would be, because it was proven when they dredged up near Pools Island. That just killed it. And that I would ask, I'm pressing my amendment for the reason of the shoals is still alive, and we want to make sure we protect that. Thank you.
Gentleman from Talbot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to just rise in support of the floor leader and in opposition to the amendment. It should be noted for everyone that that this particular oyster bar was ranked dead last in the survey as far as life. It is not a productive oyster bed, but that's beside the point. I just wanted to make sure to rise in opposition to the amendment.
On the amendment. Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to rise to support the amendment. It is pretty clear to me. We've dredged the Upper Bay for 40 years. We've destroyed all our natural resources. It hasn't fixed the problem. And I understand the Eastern Shore does want to continue to destroy our resources. It's not the solution. We shouldn't be, in this body, we shouldn't be destroying our natural resources and subsidizing private industry to the detriment of the watermen of Baltimore County. I think that's the right solution, and it does make sense, so I stand to support the amendment.
The gentleman from Caroline.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I can assure everyone in this chamber that I don't know of a single one of my friends from the Eastern Shore who want to destroy the Chesapeake Bay. There's a difference of opinion on how we want to improve the Chesapeake Bay. Where we want to go is we would like to use the shell from an oyster bar where there is no life, where this shell is buried in mud and has been for decades. We want to renew this shell, put it on a productive bottom somewhere, let spat be attached to that shell, and then we can create an entirely new ecosystem in a different part of the bay. And we all know in this chamber that oysters, live oysters, is the absolute best way to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'll just be brief and echo the gentleman from Caroline's comments. The impetus behind our interest in oyster restoration is multifaceted on the Eastern Shore and Southern Maryland and throughout the state. Multifaceted means that we need shell to be able to accomplish our task. We can have the debate on the merits as to whether or not Man-O-War Shoals is the place to get shell and how we go about it, but I don't think anybody would argue that every single Eastern Shore representative has the environment in their mind and their hearts and thoughts. I'm a fifth-generation Eastern Shoreman, by the way, and my family heritage is farmers and watermen from Somerset County, Dames Quarters. So let me just say to you, I would love to have my children inherit the same heritage that comes from the Bay as I've enjoyed, my family and our heritage has enjoyed moving forward. We just believe that that happens through virtue of dynamic, multifaceted paths to oyster restoration, and we can have that honest debate about it, but just want to articulate the point the Caroline County delegate was saying, which is we're all for the protection of our Eastern Shore, Chesapeake Bay environment.
On the amendment. We're going to vote on your amendment.
Okay.
You had something else to say?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Yes, yeah. Maker of the amendment, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Real quick. When I was first elected, we actually went on a bus tour and we visited Horn Point. They showed us how they put spat on shell and how it was placed in different areas. And I just want to reiterate that we just placed 1.7 million spat on shell. So it is a living bar. It's a working bar. People will be coming down there, probably from Eastern Shore, taking oysters off of there. And no one was trying to say that Eastern Shore was trying to hurt us. It's just we have a totally different opinion. And I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that it is a living bar and it's surviving with all the pollutions coming out Back River. It's probably cleaning up the water. So we want to protect it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose?
Roll call, please.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker?
Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 50. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1343, major state contractors, donations to advocacy organizations, disclosure. Favor report is amended and adopted.
Recognizing the minority whip, the maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. It is Amendment 433-128/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered a reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
So I'm going to use a couple of the most hackneyed expressions of the 2022 session. This is a simple amendment. It's a common sense amendment. And I think it provides guardrails. So, is that Quorum? All right, so all this amendment does is add unions to the disclosure requirements under this bill. That means public sector unions or private sector unions who represent folks who engage in state contractual work. So if we want advocacy organizations to be disclosed, a union, it seems to me, and my father was a union official, a union, it seems to me, is the quintessential advocacy organization and should be included. So with that, Madam Speaker, I move the amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I appreciate the delegate giving me the amendment beforehand, so thank you for that. I am going to have to respectfully disagree. Rather than providing guardrails, this opens up the bill. And in fact, instead of being common sense, it is nonsense. Sorry, that was the only other sense word I could come up with. So this bill is about disclosures by contractors who are receiving state dollars. That's what this bill is about. It's saying if you are a major contractor and you make a covered disbursement to an organization that is then basically putting out publicity to support your cause as a contractor on a contract for state dollars, then you, the contractor, need to disclose that payment to the State Board of Elections. That's all this is. It's about saying if you are getting a whole lot of money from the state, from taxpayers, and you are going to then use your money to run publicity ads about yourself and about the contract that you want to get, you need to tell us that you're doing that. That's all this bill is. Unions don't get major multi-million-dollar contracts from the state government. They don't. That's not how this works. If you are a union, so there are two ways, and my friend from Baltimore City can elaborate on this if you're ever all interested, since she works in this industry. There are two ways that unions come into play here. First, if you are a contractor, you might be a signatory to a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement, with a union, and then you hire the union workers, you go to the hall on contracts that come to you, whether they're from the state or somebody else. Alternatively, there may be a PLA, hopefully there's a PLA that is in the state contract that has gone to the Board of Public Works. And so then you would enter into agreement, and you would, with a union, you being a contractor, would enter in an agreement with a union and hire those workers. But the union itself is providing the workers, right? The contractor is getting the dollars. So all this bill does is say if you're a contractor and you're getting more than $1 million, then if you're a contractor, then you need to disclose if you're paying money. So I urge the body to resist this amendment because it is a totally different set of circumstances and doesn't make any sense in this case. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
The majority leader.
I appreciate the sentiments of my friend from Baltimore City, but I thought about something while she was talking there. If I was a union, like say a trades union, like Leona or one of the major trades union, and I wanted my members to get the benefits of working on, let's just say, a major highway transportation project somewhere in the metropolitan area, I am certainly benefiting. My members are certainly benefiting. When we say, well, the contractors get the money, but Whiting Turner or a major asphalt company, they don't keep all the money. When we give them $50 million, my guess is they turn around and give $49 million of it back to who? The workers. When you own a business and you sell something to someone, you don't say, well, I own the business, I get to keep all the money. You pay all the workers. So if I was a major trade organization, labor union organization, and I wanted to influence the state of Maryland through a 501c3, C4 advocacy group, I wanted to run television ads to say, please build this road, please build this building, please build this metro. Why would I be any different about having to disclose that than the contractor, than the management side? And then I thought also, if I was a union comprised of state and municipal employees, almost virtually every dollar that forms my budget comes from the taxpayer. Because the taxpayer pays all of my members, one way or the other. That's how they qualify to be in the union. They're government workers. And then they take a portion of that
and turn that over to me and do. So almost all of the money that a government worker, public sector union is getting, in fact, comes from the taxpayer, comes from the government. That's just the way it works. And if they wanted to say, well, I'm going to donate to one of these groups for, let's say, a transformational educational plan, once in a lifetime, billions and billions of dollars, I want to run television ads to promote that issue advocacy, wouldn't that money, in fact, if it's coming from one of those types of unions, be coming from the government at its core? And no one wants to prevent that. No one wants to prohibit that. That is free speech. That is our system, and it's a good system. But if we're saying that the company, and I'm not saying, that anybody here thinks the evil company, but sometimes it feels like that in a way. If the company wants to do this, well, they have to make an immediate disclosure so we can call them out and say, don't believe their television ads. It's all coming from the company. Committee for a Better Maryland is really this company that's going to get money from whatever they're advocating. But if Committee for a Better Maryland is being funded by the labor sector, we don't need to know that. And that, to me, is illogical. I think that the amendment is well conceived. I think that it's fair and reasonable and isn't intended to hurt anyone. It just puts all the big players, and if you don't think that public sector unions and private sector unions in Maryland are big players, we know better. It puts all the players on the same footing. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you for that, Delegate. But again, I just want to emphasize, this bill and what we're trying to do here is about companies that are getting state dollars. This is not getting our taxpayer dollars. The union is not getting the taxpayer dollars. By that logic, the individual workers should have to each file something with the State Board of Ethics, because at the end of the day, they're getting a salary, right? That's nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. That's not what this bill is about. This bill is just saying if you are a major contractor and getting tax dollars, then you spend some of those dollars, you spend some of your money on a campaign about the contract that you're getting from the state, then you should disclose that. That's all this is. It's different than if you are an organization that is interested in passing a once-in-a-generation education bill, because that organization is not getting tax dollars. That organization itself is not getting money, right? So there's a difference there. There's a distinction with a big difference. So I urge the body to reject this amendment. Thank you.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose?
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will call the roll. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 23. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 244, Civil Actions, Damages, Use of Race, Ethnicity, and Gender Data. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1169, Child Abuse and Neglect, Training of Healthcare Professionals. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 24. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 104, Family Law, Child Custody and Visitation. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes provisions of the bill relating to the denial or interference with visitation. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 521, Landlord and Tenant, Repossession for Failure to Pay Rent, Shielding of Court Records. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendments provide that the provisions of the bill do not apply to a record relating to an action for repossession for failure to pay rent that resulted in a money judgment entered in favor of the landlord except under certain circumstances, prohibit a petition from being filed until the appeal period has lapsed, and alter language in the bill providing that the court may, instead of shall, grant a petition, and if the court denies the petition, the court must provide the reasons for the denial. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 863, Forensics Analysis, Letter of Exception, Criminal Proceedings. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 prohibits a court rather than the Secretary of Health from requiring a letter of exception for an individual to testify in a criminal proceeding if the individual is reviewing the data and not handling the physical evidence. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1021, Public Safety, Licensed Firearms Dealers, Security Requirements. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Speaker.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds provisions authorizing the Secretary to suspend or revoke a dealer's license under certain circumstances. Amendment number 3 adds additional security features that a dealer may use to satisfy the requirements under this bill. Amendment number 4 is clarifying and alters the security requirements and provides the provisions of the bill do not apply if the equipment or alarm system becomes temporarily inoperable at no fault of the dealer. Amendment number 5 alters the penalty provisions of the bill and authorizes the Secretary to adopt rules and regulations to determine if a dealer has met the requirements under the bill. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Recognize the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could I hold the bill until the appropriate time next session?
Until tomorrow, yes.
The question before the House is to Special Order HB 1021 until the next session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Bill has been special ordered. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1298, Natural Resources, Hunting and Fishing Offenses, Expungement. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 pares the bill down so that it simply adds 8 specified hunting offenses to the current list that may be expunged. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Message from the Senate, consent calendar number 30. Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the first bill and committee assignment.
Senate Bill 275, Senator Hayes, Economic Matters.
Recognizing Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the reading of Senate Bill 275 be considered the reading of all the bills on the calendar.
Hearing no objections, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committee.
Madam Speaker.
Delegate from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to make sure that the body knows that earlier tonight that the University of Maryland ladies beat Delaware by a score of 102-71 in the NCAA tournament.
That ends the work at the desk. Committee announcements. Environment and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Environment and Transportation Committee needs to finish up a voting session at 7:45.
Any other committees? Any caucus announcements? None.
Madam
We
Speaker.
chair the Republican caucus.
Madam Speaker, the Republican caucus, we're going to have an early bird special tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So we're going to meet at 9 a.m. in room 145.
Okay. Any other caucuses? Okay. All right. Women History Month moment. Gentle lady from Prince George's County. No. Mm-mm. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good evening, everyone. On
Good
March 10th, 1822, Arminta Ross was born in Dorchester County, Maryland. She was hired out at the early age of 5 years old, and her childhood was marked with severe abuse from slaveholders. During her adolescence, Arminta defiantly refused to restrain a field hand who tried to leave the plantation without permission. When the field hand made his escape, the overseer threw a heavy weight to stop him. But he missed the field hand and hit Arminta in the head. She became unconscious and suffered severe trauma. She was given no medical attention as she lay unconscious for several days. When she gained consciousness, she was sent right back to the fields. This injury caused her to suffer a lifetime of headaches and seizures. It also gave her premonitions of God and vivid dreams of escaping slavery. Arminta would later undergo brain surgery because of the pain and her inability to sleep. She refused anesthesia, instead biting down on a bullet, something she had seen injured soldiers do in the Civil War. In 1849, Arminta's owners threatened to sell her. She then decided to take matters into her own hands. She adopted her mother's first name and her husband John Tubman's last name, and she traveled 90 miles on the Underground Railroad as Harriet Tubman to the free state of Pennsylvania. In 1859, Harriet Tubman assisted John Brown by recruiting supporters and sharing her contacts and information on escape routes in the region. Brown called her General Tubman because of her valued knowledge, but John Brown was later captured at Harper's Ferry and sentenced to death. During the Civil War, Harriet served as a cook, a nurse, a scout, and a spy for Union soldiers in South Carolina. As the first woman to lead a regiment, she and her soldiers set fire to a large plantation and forced Confederate soldiers to retreat. She also used gunboats to help free more than 700 people from slavery. Maryland has its own national park dedicated to Tubman. The Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad National Historical Park in Dorchester County is the site of the plantation where Tubman was enslaved as a girl. The general store, also located there, is where Harriet suffered the head injury when she was an adolescent. Harriet is a shining example of courage and determination. On March 10th, our governor proclaimed 2022 as the year of Harriet Tubman. As we celebrate the 200th year of her birth, she is the perfect freedom fighter to spotlight during Women's History Month 2022. But today, we have a lot of freedom fighters to spotlight. We have our Madam Speaker, who stands on her feet the whole time we're sitting here, listening to her and making rules as we find a way to freedom for Marylanders. We all, in addition, we have all these women in the House who should stand with her now, because we too are her foot soldiers, navigating the way through the Underground Railroad. And just like Harriet had help from Mr. John Brown, we ask the men of the House to stand with us and bite the bullet, because we need your help to plan for and shape our beloved state of Maryland. Let's fiercely work together to think about more than ourselves. Like Harriet did, we need to reach back to unselfishly lift someone else up, to assure that everyone has freedom and access to the tools they need to become equal and successful. As we deliberate these laws, let's pass them together, men and women, Democrats and Republicans, knowing that we can do great things and that we can make Maryland a better place for all people to enjoy freedom. Let's stand together and be warriors, because together we can make a difference. Thank you.
Very nice. Very nicely done. Quorum called before adjournment.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? Clerk will take the call. There being 126 members present, the House is still in session, recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm paying attention to this time. I move that the House stand adjourned until Saturday, March 19th at 10 a.m. Legislative Day, March 13th.
Have a good evening, everyone.